Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Way That I See It. My name is Lucy Superfox, and this is my podcast. So I'm a bit late this week. I haven't been late on my podcast for probably about 7 months, but I had a wildly busy weekend, and then I got back and I was just absolutely exhausted. And the irony was, then I started overthinking about a podcast about overthinking. But here we are. So I wanted to do a bit of a blast on really what overthinking is. I think the terms worry, anxiety, overthinking, stressing get used massively out of context. And so what I really wanted to share with you is what overthinking is to me, when you get stuck in overthinking, what to then do, right? How to take action, how to overcome it, and ultimately why it's tripping you up and why it's showing up in the first place. So first things first, overthinking, if you break down the word, is thinking and over, which normally means more of or greater than, right? So therefore, you are thinking more than or greater than is required or necessary for the task at hand. That is how I interpret and understand overthinking on a logical cognitive sense, is that you are thinking more than is required about a subject. Now, the reason that we do it, the reason that we overthink, the reason that we ruminate or dwell on things is usually because it doesn't feel safe to trust ourselves to make a decision. So if, let's say, you were offered a job or offered a business opportunity or offered a date with someone, it doesn't really matter what it is, and you spend days and days and hours overthinking it, going back and forth, playing out all the scenarios, right, forwards and backwards, and then rewinding them and fast forwarding them, and you still can't make a decision, right, that's a big sign that you don't actually trust yourself to know. And the reason that we don't often trust ourselves is we can get very out of sync with ourselves. So we can end up being in a situation where we think we know where we're going, we think we know who we are, and then life can catch us off guard, or life can, take us out the game. And then what happens is we then don't trust that we made a good decision. And that can lead us to question not only our, emotional well-being, but also our nervous system then feels dysregulated and gets dysregulated because something we expected to happen didn't happen. And that causes, and I use the word very lightly and not in a, it's not a light thing, but I use the word very light, a trauma response in the body, because the body basically panics and says, this, I don't feel safe, this isn't right, this isn't what was supposed to happen. And then we develop basically an emotional memory, both imprinted in the body and the mind, about those scenarios. And then what happens is we take that on our journey with us, and whenever something goes wrong or something doesn't go the way we planned, every single time that happens, we then don't trust ourselves to make the decision in the hope that we can control the outcome. So the reason that we overthink or we ruminate is we believe that the more that we think about something, or the more that we question it, or the more that we analyze it, and look, I'm the fucking queen of this. I was an event manager for 10 years before I walked away from corporate life. I still work in the space of events on a consultancy basis for the big global not-for-profit. And I forward and back things all the time. Risk assessments, I get paid to make them, right? But the challenge is when we apply that kind of approach to our personal life, what we end up doing is just causing upset and stress and worry and negative emotions that don't create, manifest, or change anything. So if you find yourself really in this place where you're ruminating, questioning, overthinking, I would ask yourself, why don't I trust myself to make a decision? You will likely, from asking yourself that question, get a fucking good answer. Something like, well, the last time you trusted yourself, this happened, or because it's not safe to put myself out there in case I get rejected again, or something will happen where you'll say, why is it not safe to trust myself? When you'll say, because that boyfriend always told me I made bad decisions or chose bad restaurants. Like, you will get the answer. And I think this is why journaling, right? Side note, journaling is fucking powerful if you do it right. I am not a believer in a 5-minute journal. I'm really sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I don't believe in it. I believe in the concept and practice of it doesn't need to take hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And actually, for sure, if you're somebody that wants to start somewhere, it's a great place to start. But I just believe that if you're actually going to use a journal is there for two things. One, to write notes. So basically, when you've got somewhere you want to kind of log stuff and log how you're feeling and just let stuff out and let stuff go. And two, automatic writing. And automatic writing is where you ask yourself a probing question and then you let it come, right? And if you've got a fucking 5-minute journal with half a page, what are you going to get out? Absolutely fucking nothing. So I am a big believer in asking difficult questions of ourselves. Tony Robbins talks about the quality of the questions is the quality of your life. Now, what some people interpret that as asking positive questions gets positive answers. And I agree, it does. So if you say, what are all the reasons why I should take the job? You'll get a load of good reasons. But sometimes, is it important to ask, what are all the reasons I shouldn't take the job? That's also a good list to write. And it's not because we need to weigh up the pros and cons of our life, right? A lot of people do this. It's because we need to identify where there is a sneaky, limiting, conditioning, negative belief hiding in your life, or a negative story, or a negative paradigm, or a negative trauma, or something that's happened that is dictating the decision that you are unable to make. So the reason that you're overthinking is because there is usually a belief or a safety trigger running the show, stopping you from making that decision, and you're overthinking to protect yourself. So by asking yourself challenging questions like, what are all the reasons I can't achieve my goal? What are all the reasons I shouldn't take the job? Why shouldn't I go out on a date? You'll start to see in plain sight all the reasons, and you'll go, well, that's not fucking true, and that's not fucking true, and that's not fucking true, and that's not fucking true. And then you can go, great, I'm going to make a decision to go on the date, take the job, see the man, start the business, whatever it is, right? So I think what I really hope that you can take from this is that you are overthinking to protect yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. Like, you're not. I think sometimes people judge themselves so harshly because they don't understand why they can't make a decision. And I can tell you why, because you don't trust yourself to make a decision. And you don't trust yourself because of either previous experience from other people or experiences in your own life where you did trust yourself and it went tits up, right? Honey, that's life. I went through something quite dramatic in 2020, and I really thought I had it down. And what turns out I didn't. And basically it all fell apart. And actually, you could also use my first marriage as an example. I really thought that was what I wanted to do. I really thought that was where I wanted to be in my life, and we wanted to be together. And then one day I didn't, and I didn't trust myself to make that decision. So I deleted and dallied, and it was just fucking awful. And I put him and me through a whole load of pain whilst I overthought about whether or not that was the right thing to do. Now, I'm not saying make impulsive decisions about ending a marriage, but what I am saying is I didn't trust myself because in previous relationships, I'd ended a relationship and then regretted it. Right. And actually, I think even then I didn't trust myself because somebody had told me that my decisions weren't good enough. So what you've got to get to is understanding that when you overthink things or question things or try to weigh up all the pros and cons all the time, what you're actually trying to do is give yourself enough evidence to make a decision so you can trust yourself. But here's the thing, and I've just said this to a coaching client actually, your outer environment cannot be the measure or the barometer that you live your life against. Your internal environment is all you can change and control. It's the only thing that you can dial up, dial down, expand, grow. And then as a result, your outward life grows. It's not the other way around. Like, so many people are looking outside of themselves to make a decision about what they do internally. But the truth is the outside world is always changing. Look at how the last 3 years have gone up and down. We've had cultural movements, we've had global pandemics, we've had peaks and troughs in recessions and markets, and all of those things could have determined how a lot of people felt. But the people that have thrived in that time did not allow their outer circumstances and outer environments to dictate the decisions they made or how they told things. And if they did, they often probably ended up in a place where they questioned themselves. And I definitely went through this. I'm pretty sure I used to fully trust myself. And through negative experiences that have happened, I allowed that to mean that I was wrong. But here's the thing, just because you made a decision and it didn't work out exactly how you thought it was going to, does that mean you were wrong? Does it? No, because most of the time, the only decision you can make is the action, the intention, the energy that you take to each moment. You cannot control anything outside of your control, right? Control the controllables. So if actually in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about your circle of influence, and influence now means freaking followers on Instagram, right? But influence just simply means where you have impact, where you actually have control. The word control is quite negative. So where do you actually control the controllables? And so when people are overthinking, what they're actually trying to do is control something that's an uncontrollable. So some questions for you. 1, right? When you're overthinking, maybe ask yourself the negative question. 2, right, why don't I trust myself? Why don't I trust myself to make a decision? What about this decision is unsafe, right? And then 3, really, really, really look at if you are trying to control something outside of your control. Because if you actually focused on just the things inside your control, whether that was in your business, your marketing and your sales, right? Or servicing your clients and then posting on social media, and you let go of everything else, so how many people it reached, because you can control the quality of the caption, the quality of the picture, at what time you post. You cannot control how it's received. If you are trying to control how your posts are received, if you are trying to control how your clients act, if you are trying to control other people in your business, right, you'll be trying to do that for the rest of your fucking life. What you can do, and all you can ever do, is change your internal environment, and that shows up on the outside, which then in turn has an impact and a reaction. But when we spend all our time trying to control the outside world and control the things outside of our sphere of control, we'll waste a lot of energy and we'll spend a lot of time overthinking. So it's safe to trust yourself. It might not feel like it right now, and you might have to start small and grow that over time. And trust me, I have been there. I am still there in some areas of my life, feeling safe to trust myself. It took a long time for me to be as bold and bright and bolshy and, loud as I am on this podcast, because there was a part of me that didn't feel safe that what I was saying, I could trust myself to say. And actually now I just know that everything I say on this podcast is what people need to hear. And if they're not listening to my podcast, they don't need to hear it, because I control the controllables. So control the controllables. It's safe to trust yourself. And when it doesn't feel like it is, ask yourself why. I love you all very much. I hope this helps. Feel free to leave a review. I'd love to know what you thought. I'll see you on the next episode.